Konnichiwa, hajimemashite. Watashi wa Chavez desu. Gakusei desu. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. I'm not wearing a traditional Japanese clothes as you might be expecting today, but here are some photos taken in Japan when I had a chance visiting some cities there during one of our educational tours when I was working in Shanghai. I hope you'll enjoy them. Japan is a country that has one of the world's longest measurable histories. Japan also has around 1,100 national treasures and 13,000 items of cultural significance. During Japan's history, since its establishment around 3,000 years ago, there have been many different cultures within Japan that have been born, flourished, and perished over time. In particular, there have been particular aspects of Japanese culture such as samurai, ninja, and tea ceremony that are well known throughout the world. For us Filipinos, Japan has been a wonderful place to enjoy for vacation, and of course, it has also a significant influence in our life from cartoon shows, manga anime, cosplay, gadgets, video games, vehicles, and yes, for a huge number of OFWs working there, including English language teachers in different prefectures in Japan. I had a wonderful chance of visiting the elementary school there, and not to mention roaming around few cities and being captivated with their beauty. In this report, we will look back at Japanese culture as it has developed over time. We will see how Japan has developed into the country it is today, its important policies in the government, education, and specifically language. Now let's have a look at the summarized sequence of Japan's historical importance. During 15,000 to 300 BCE, Jomon period, Jomon people were a native of the Japanese archipelago who were hunter-gatherers. Cord-marked pottery was also their identity. 300 BCE to 300 AD, Yayoi period, bronze and iron use with initial Korean and Chinese influence. Advanced farming, increase in population 100 kingdoms in Wa or Japan. The first known written reference to Japan was recorded in the Chinese Book of Han in the 1st century or 240 AD. And Yamato clan takes hegemony. Now let's have a look at this comparison between Jomon and Yayoi faces. Find out who's gorgeous, who's more handsome and more beautiful. But well, they're Japanese, and of course, every Japanese would say they are beautiful, and they are in their own ways. Now, 250 to 538, during Kofun period, there's this unification of most of Japan by the Yamato clan. The Kofun period is named after the enormous burial mounds or tumuli that grew dramatically in number and size during this time. This tumulus has a distinct key-shaped pattern common during the Kofun era. It is the burial site of the Emperor Nintoko. The treasures contained inside show considerable connections to China and Korea. During 538 to 710, Asuka period, Buddhism introduced by King Seong of the Korean Kingdom of Baekje. Asuka is the capital. And between 587 to 645, Soga hegemony. Soga clan takes government power, ruling as regents. Between 587 to 645, Yamato Emperor becomes figurehead. First use of name Nihon. Why Yamato allies the Fujiwara and overthrow the Soga clan. Fujiwara takes control of the government through marriage, following tradition of raising the son by the mother's family. And for example, we have this Yamato Emperor and Fujiwara Empress. The imperial family of Japan, sometimes known as the Yamato dynasty, the oldest monarchy in the world still existing today. During 710 to 794, and that is Nara period, the capital moved to Nara. Droughts and famine was there, and lack of morality widely blamed. Buddhism strengthened. In 794 to 1185, during Heian period, Fujiwara power peak, cloistered rule, the later Heian retired emperors held power, and 794 capital moved to Heian-kyo or Kyoto in the present time. Between 812 to 814, smallpox kills as much as half Japanese population, great loss of court power, thus Fujiwara power much of rural mobility gains tax exempt status and autonomy, becoming a state shogun. Owners shogun began to employ their own samurai armies, Minamoto and Taira rivalry. Both of these clans became powerful as the central government hired them to suppress rebellions and piracy, eventual Minamoto-Taira wars, 3 of them. In 1156, Hogen Rebellion, and both clans support rival Yamato claimants to the imperial throne, and Taira triumph. In 1160, Heiji Rebellion, Minamoto captures the emperor and retired emperor. Poor planned Taira triumph for the second time. In 1180 to 1185, there's this Tensei War, Minamoto triumph. And there's this time for the shogunates. 1185 to 1333, Kamakura period, Minamoto no Yoritomo takes power by 1185, becomes shogun by 1192. Emperor relegated to ceremonial status, Bakufu system. The shogunate developed with the shogun rules the country as a military dictator on the emperor's behalf. Shogunate becomes increasingly decentralized. 300 daimyos, fiefdoms. Samurai evolves into an hereditary class of warriors. In 1274 to 1281, Mongol invasions defeated. If you would look at this pyramid illustration of the ruling power, we have the emperor on top, followed by the shogun, and samurai, and so on and so forth. 1333 to 1568, the Muromachi period, and 1333 to 1336, the Kenmo restoration is there. Yamato court tries to regain power, and Ashikaga Takoji, of related line to the Minamoto, restores the shogunate. In 1336 to 1573, Ashikaga shogunate gradually loses power. 1467 to 1568, Shingoku Jidai, Age of Warring Estates. In 1568 to 1600s, Azuki Momoyama period, Oda Nobunaga conquers most of Japan, use of European firearms to great effect, promoting people by ability instead of birth. Oda Nobunaga dies, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Oda's general, completes unification, frees most slaves, tries to invade Korea, and in 1592 to 1598, and 120,000 Chinese-Korean allies. The invasion ceased 1600s. Battle of Sekigahara, Tokugawa Ieyasu triumphs. In 1600 to 1868, and this is Edo period, Tokugawa shogunate population doubles to 13 million, literacy over 30%, probably highest in the world. Isolationism, samurai class, becomes a burden. Eventual economic stagnation and decline. 1853, American fleet forces Japan to open up to international trade. 1868 to 1912, Meiji period. In 1868 to 1869, Boshin War, shogunate versus empire. Empire victorious in Meiji Restoration, empire takes power. Japan rapidly modernizes. Meiji oligarchs rose with Japanese War, Japanese victory. In 1912 to 1945, the so-called expansionism, world wars, and American victory. You know what is Japan's population in 2020? The current population of Japan is 126,320. The current population of Japan is 126,320,006 as of Wednesday, November 25, 2020. Based on Worldometer elaboration of the latest United Nations data, Japan 2020 population is estimated at 126,476,461 people at mid-year according to UN data. Japan population is equivalent to 1.62% of the total world population. When it comes to religion, according to the annual statistical research on religion in 2018 by the Agency for Cultural Affairs, Government of Japan, 69.0% of the population practices Shintoism, 67.7% Buddhism, 1.5% Christianity, and 6.2% other religions. Total adherence exceeds 100% because many Japanese people practice both Shintoism and Buddhism. Muslims, 70,000, are made up of largely immigrant communities, as well as, though much smaller, the ethnic Japanese community. Japanese is the official and primary language of Japan. When it comes to language, Japanese has a lexically distinct pitch accent system. Early Japanese is known largely on the basis of its state in the 8th century when the three major works of Old Japanese were compiled. The earliest attestation of the Japanese language is in a Chinese document from 256 AD. The Japanese language has no genetic relationship with Chinese, belonging instead to a completely different family of languages known as the Japonic languages, as some researchers claim. Japanese is written with a combination of three scripts: kanji, hiragana, and katakana. Chinese characters, or kanji, are extremely used in Japanese writing as non-phonetic ideograms, imported from China to Japan in 50 AD. Before that time, Japan had no system of writing. In the present day, there are a notable number of kanji in modern Japanese with a different meaning from the corresponding Hanzi character used in modern Chinese. Modern Japanese also features far fewer simplified Chinese characters in comparison to modern Chinese. Japanese people typically use fewer kanji in general and use them mainly for nouns, adjectives, stems, and verb stems. In language, both hiragana and katakana are phonetic syllabaries derived from the Chinese manvogana of the 5th century. Hiragana and katakana were developed from simplified kanji. Hiragana emerged somewhere around the 9th century and was mainly used by women for informal language, with katakana mainly used by men for formal language. By the 10th century, both were commonly used by everyone. The Latin alphabet is often used in modern Japanese, especially for company names and logos, advertising, and when inputting Japanese into a computer. The Indo-Arabic numerals are generally used for numbers, but traditional Sino-Japanese numerals are common. In national language policy, the Japanese government adopted a standard language, Ryujongo. The growth of non-Japanese nationalities is an emerging demography. There are minority languages and indigenous languages. The economic successes from the 1970s enabled families to spend more on education in a globalizing world. These factors led the call to internationalize the Japanese people. There is concern that foreign language education is becoming subsumed under a quasi-nationalistic and ideological policy of the central government of globalization. There are concerns about the growing insularity among young Japanese, and to improve their communication and problem-solving skills, English classes are currently offered once a week in the final 2 years of elementary school, and there are government plans to teach from grade 3 and make English a formal subject by the year 2020. Korean as a foreign language is the fastest growing foreign language of study in Japan, and there are Chinese ethnic bilingual schools. Still, for national language policy, language revitalization is driven by the tension between heritage Ainu and benign authorities who wish to protect and preserve Ainu culture in accord with the legal requirements. Ryukyuan plays no official role in public education in the Okinawan education system, and its use has traditionally been discouraged in schools. Deaf Sign Language or JSL activity has intensified in recent years. Brazilian language maintenance schools have been established. The steady increase in the number of foreign students enrolled in educational institutions impacts the growing field of the teaching of Japanese as a foreign language. Popular culture is crucial to the validity and pedagogy of Japanese language teaching. Language and cultural hybridity, non-essentialism, and metro-ethnicization are emerging social-linguistic themes. Regarding the level of education, the level of Japanese education is high even by world standards. In OECD's Program for International Students Assessment or PISA, aimed at 15-year-olds, Japanese students recorded high levels of achievement, particularly in science-related areas. Educational activities outside of school also flourish, and programs leading to advanced education are implemented. Enrollment in schools. The second half of secondary education reaches over 90%, and enrollments in college are also high, reaching over 50%. Admission to high schools and colleges is mainly through entrance exams, held from January to March. In the foreign language education, English is a compulsory subject in junior high and high schools. There are also elementary schools that introduce English education from intermediate grade classes. In some high schools, apart from English, students are also allowed to take courses in Chinese, Korean, French, German, and others. Student clubs, they exist. Student clubs are a characteristic part in Japan's school education. Under teachers' guidance, students with the same interests in sports, cultural activities, or fields of study voluntarily gather together after classes and on days off. There are also numerous student clubs revolving around Japanese traditional sports and culture, such as Judo, Kendo or Japanese swordsmanship, Sado or Japanese tea ceremony, Kado or Japanese flower arrangement, Shodo or the so-called Japanese calligraphy, etc. Club activities also provide students with a chance to participate in school exchange and friendly matches.